Wish your die cuts were already colored before you even started? I'm going to show you 3 fast coloring hacks that will save you time, are lots of fun, and we're going to build a shaped shaker card. So lots of details in this video. Let's go. We're starting with this Honeybee Stamps tank. It is a Lovely Layers product, and this is going to be the shape of our shaker card. Also use this tank aquarium add-on from Lovely Layers, as well as the Lovely Layers fish. Now, Honeybee Stamps has printouts for their layering guides that you can get off of the internet, and I really like this fish one. I'll show you how I use it in this video. All right, if you haven't done it yet, hit the like and subscribe on the channel. We're going to start with lots of paper towels, a sticky mat, and some watercolor paper. I'm going to spritz it with water, and we're going to pull out something that I forget to use in my craft room, and that is going to be these sprays. So I decided I wanted some really bright color elements in my aquarium, and I thought the easiest way to achieve that with some variation and interest was to create some sprayed backgrounds that I can die cut from. So I'm going to create some bright colors and show you how I did it, and that's going to end up being our coral and different parts of our aquarium. And really, I'm going to be really free with this. Sometimes I use a brush just to spread the color out. It just gives you a little different variation with a little bit more pink. And it really is all about just playing with it and thinking about how you want your coral to look. To me, the splatter effect is a great idea for coral. So I wanted to spread to make sure I've got my whole panel covered with some color. So I'm adding a little bit more water, kind of holding it down, and we'll also dry these panels. And then you always have the option with mixed media to add more layers if you're not liking what it looks like. It's very easy and freeing, and I bet you have some sprays in your collection that you are afraid to use. So when I get so much water on it, I do bring a dryer in, and this is a heat tool from Wow Embossing, and it's just to kind of get it not so saturated and try to keep my lines from running, because it wants to bend up like this. So I actually use a paper towel and dab off some of the areas, and I kind of like the way it looks. It gives it like a pinker look right there, which I thought looked pretty cool. Now, I want my aquarium to be bright and colorful and exciting, so I'm going to use this piece, and then I'm going to show you some different types of sprays and different types of watercolor that I use to create those like neon type colors. So I had this picket fence, really neon-y watercolor, and I thought I would just kind of make a mess on this piece of paper. I started off and I got it a little bit dirty. You could see that first strike. I had something else there. But I just thought this might be fun to kind of have a little bit, it has just like a little bit of body to it. And so I went through and just went with the neon all over the paper just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And I really like how it turned out. So I mixed some colors on the next one, which is our orange, and let me show you what I did. I don't even know if, you know how it is. I don't use these all the time, so I don't know if this is allowed or usual, but I decided to use the Delusions ink spray, and it was a really nice dark orange, just super dark, but I'm kind of going more neon-y color. So I went on and filled in some space with this, and then I came back. And once I'd gotten this moving around the paper a little bit, I dried it some, and then I added Distress Oxide spray. So let me show you once I come in and add that Distress Oxide spray so that you can see what that looks like. So this is Distress Oxide Spiced Marmalade, and it just kind of softens that panel a little bit, and I just added a few sprays to kind of make a difference, and so we had some light orange, we had some kind of darker, more reddy oranges. Now, I continued on with other panels, and I'll make sure to put in the links below what I used. On the blue background panel, I did do a little bit of shimmer spray over 2 colors of blue. Both of these, I did 2 forms of Distress Oxide sprays, and I did 1 Delusion spray plus that shimmer spray. So here's where we ended up. We had a neon green, we had orange, we had this red. I know I didn't do that one in the video, but I will link all the colors, and then the beautiful purple. And to me, that just looks like the perfect aquarium. We're going to have an awesome blue background and super bright die cuts. So we're going to die cut out of this, and I want to show you what it looks like. So you can send this all through your die cutting machine at the same time. I wasn't sure how many of the aquarium cards I would make, so I just wanted to cut out lots of different options, but I didn't use all of my colored paper because I'm hoping to use it for something else. But look at how cool and all the definition on this little coral piece. It's got lots of white and it's got those darker spots. I think it just looks amazing. So I'm going to cut out various colors of coral, and then we're going to move to our second way of coloring die cuts that I feel like is a really fun, easy way to create a wood grain look. And I'm going to show you how I accomplish that on this card. For our second way to color die cuts, we're going to use a more traditional method with Copic markers, and I'm only going to do the pieces that should look like wood. This is E33, and I'm going to lay down a base coat, and this technique of creating a wood grain is something that's super easy. I don't consider myself, a coloring artist, and it really gives an amazing look with very easy. So I wanted to make sure that I showed you how to do it because it can really transform your projects on things that look like wood. It just makes them look so cool. So we're going to lay down a base color. And the reason we still have some white is because we have these other pieces up here that actually have kind of a wood grain pattern to them from the die cut, and they're going to glue on top of this. So now I'm just taking E35, which is a little darker color, and I'll zoom in on it, and I'm just creating little swipes. So just little marks on the edge that make it have so much detail. So I'll continue that along this edge, and then we're going to color the pieces that go on top. Now, one thing about this shaker card that you're going to see me do different is that because the sides of this aquarium are very thin, they're thinner than most foam tapes. So we're going to have to kind of build our shaker card from scratch, and I'll show you an easy way to do that. Since Honeybee puts a lot of detail in their dies, I can just swipe the medium color, which is the E35, all over this. And because there's raised and lowered areas, it already looks like wood grain. That's kind of the pattern that's in there. So you don't have to be super fancy with it. But look when we add the extra layer of depth. So when we go in with E37, it just looks really cool because you got the little highlights of kind of some areas that weren't really colored, and then you're adding in a little bit of this on the edges, and I just usually take a few swipes through the middle just to put a couple of little extra notches in that wood grain there, and it looks so cool. Let me show you the final product. All right, so here's how this is going to look when we put it together. So cute! So now let's build a shaker card. We need an acetate base, and the only way that I could get good adhesive on these little teeny edges, because I didn't have any tape that was small enough, was to use a little bit of tape runner. And then I used some double-sided adhesive on the bigger spots. I could have just used tape runner on that. And now we're going to add our acetate, because you don't want to use a liquid adhesive with acetate, because if it squishes out onto it, it kind of occludes your beautiful clear window that you have. So it's really better to use a double-sided adhesive and then place your acetate on that. So this is going to be the window. So we're just going to add acetate and trim where we don't need it. Try not to pick it up before you've got it laid down like you want it to. And then we'll trim off the excess. All right, so we'll trim that off, and then I'm going to show you, I cut the card base. I took an A2 card base, and I just kind of trimmed the edges so this would fit. It's pretty easy. It's already folded. It's ready. We've got our beautiful blue background that we're going to put in there. And now all we need to do is build up the window, because right now it's flat, and we need more height so that we can put shaker pieces in there, which is where all these extra pieces come in. I used scrap paper and just cut out tons and tons of extra pieces to layer. Now I am going to use glue to layer these pieces because it helps me have a little bit more movement and make sure everything is lined up. I did a total of 6 of these layers to create my shaker window. So to give enough height so that we've got different shaker pieces. Now, if you're going to use a really big shaker piece, you're going to need even more height. I'm using little glass beads, and those will fit perfectly in this. So we'll glue all 6 of these pieces together. Of course, I'm gonna fly through that just because I know you don't wanna sit here and watch me glue. And then I'm gonna add my front window. Once we add that window to those 6 pieces, it's gonna stand up. I would still suggest that with this last piece that you use some double-sided adhesive again, instead of using a glue that could possibly seep out on the acetate for this part. With the layers, I don't think it matters, but with this part, I would definitely use a double-sided adhesive. Then we can put the window on our extra pieces that are lifting everything up, get it set. And then I want to show you how awesome this is going to look over the blue background. And we'll look at how we're kind of setting this card up, a few little hints. And then we still need fish. We've got coral, we've got all of these beautiful things here, but we still need our little fish. And we're going to use even a different way to color die cuts for the fish. So I'm going to go through that and show you some cute little things. But doesn't this coral just look so cute in all these bright colors? So let's make a few fish from the Lovely Layers fish set to go with our beautiful little tank. I'm using the printout that shows you how to layer. It's called a layering guide, and you can get this off of the website. I want to show you a different way to think about these dies. To me, if I'm going to use the same colors as on the layering sheet, it is the easiest for me to go ahead and start laying out the dies along where I'm going to use. Now, of course, be careful you don't dump all the dies on the floor, but mine are on my crafting desk, and I just go ahead and lay out all the pieces that look like they match with the particular fish, so that when I go to create these die cuts, I already know what colors I want to use, and I know what I'm cutting out, because you can get a little bit extensive in how much we're cutting. The third way that you could use for die cuts is just using colored cardstock. For me, I wanted the coral to have that unique mixed media look, but I am okay with my fish being very solid so that they show up. So I just grabbed lots of different colors of cardstock from all different brands to create these adorable fish. Now, if you want to, you can stop with colored cardstock, but I always want to create even more detail. And so I'm going to take my colored cardstock as like a base, and then I'm going to add a few details. And we'll see. I would love for you to tell me in the comments if you have tried any of these. Now, I did my ink blending so fast that I actually did not record it. So as you can see on the purple one there, I have definitely ink blended towards the outside edges to give it that spotlight look. I also did a little bit on the orange for the other fish. And now I'm taking a very fine black marker and I'm adding the eyes on the fish. I think that looks so cute. Now I'm constantly checking, so I wanted to go ahead and start kind of building the scene and seeing which colors of coral I wanted to use and which of the fish. And it's good to put your front plate on to see where this stuff needs to be placed. This has an edge to it, so you really need to make sure that you've got it lined up correctly. So I went on and put the fish where it's supposed to go, and I used glue in case I need to move it, but I always check with my frame to make sure that this is going to be a visible little fish. You don't want to hide it behind your frame there. Now, as I start putting things together, you still can always adjust. I decided to add some white pen to the fish because each of these mixed media panels has some white in it. You know, it has color variation. And even though I did a little bit of ink blending, I wanted to have those white highlights. So I'm going to try to zoom in on that so you can see they're very small, but they really make the fish kind of stick out. And I even did it along the little shipwreck right here too. And I know you may not think these little white marks make much of a difference on the background, but when you see this final card together, I think that you'll realize, and I'm going to zoom in and kind of show you how small the marks are. It just helps highlight those fish. It really makes them show up better in photographs and just gives them a little bit more detail and interest. So once I've got everything placed, I almost forgot to put my shaker pieces in. I was so excited with how this was looking, and you don't have to have shaker pieces, but these that I picked are so cute that I have to share about them because they look like little bubbles. So I go through and make sure that I've got the card the way that I want it. I did do a little bit of anti-static powder along the edges because I don't want all of the little beads that I'm about to put in here just to stick to these raised up areas. I want them to be able to kind of float around. So I did a little bit of powder there, and then I'm going to use some glass beads from Cat Scrappiness. These are teeny tiny, and they are perfectly round, so they do roll around a little bit, and I'm going to try to keep these to the middle of the card. That doesn't mean they're not going to roll off my card, but for the most part, I'm trying to keep them in this center area, and that way I can put the base back on. And I kind of look to see they look just like what I wanted, which is bubbles. I thought they looked like the cutest bubbles. Now, before you put your final cover on, just make sure you have enough of your beads and as many as you want. And then you need to use double-sided adhesive to seal this to the front of the card. So I put 2 strips of double-sided adhesive like I've done through on the front of this card, and then I'm using just a little teeny bit of that tape runner for the edges. Now you wanna have the edges covered really well, so make sure you get a good layer here, because if not, your little pieces are gonna sneak out that way. So I made sure I got a good layer of that double-sided adhesive, and then I'll remove the backing from the others and put it on top. And of course, I'm going to add just a few more bubbles. Of course, in this process, I've lost a few off the edge of the paper because they do roll around. So I wanted to make sure I got as many as I could inside the area. And then now I'm going to remove that adhesive backing. You really need to make sure that you've got a good seal of this front panel. So make sure when you're starting to seal it down that you don't have any of the glass beads right in the way. You see how that bottom one is? Yep, I had to move that out of the way. And now I'm going to make sure that I don't pick up any of the others and create a little opening that other ones can sneak out later. So just be cautious as you're putting it down. Make sure that your pathway is clear, and then you're able to put it on the front and seal this up. So once you have it where it's supposed to be, oh, I had to be careful right there. Sorry. You got to be careful and seal it down, put some pressure on it, and then you can roll around all of these fun bubbles inside your card with no worries that they are sneaking out. So cute. Now all this needs is a little trim on the edge just to make sure that that there's no white peeking out of the sides. I had one little spot where I was just a little bit off on it, and so I'm just trimming that off. And then really all we need is a sentiment. And so I used some sentiments from Honeybee's latest release that match all of these beautiful things. It's so cute. So we looked at 3 different ways to color our die cuts. We used watercolor, we used sprays, we used Copic markers, we used colored cardstock with extra details from ink blending and white pens and black pens. So really it's probably more than 3 ways, but we learned all kinds of ways to keep these die sets so fun and help you to color them in an effective way, especially if you're not as proficient with Copic markers as maybe someone who's just coloring this straight out. There's so many different ways. So don't think that you can't create these amazing, beautiful cards with whatever way that you use to color them. I'm so glad to have had you for my video today. Make sure you tell me in comments if you've tried any of these and what you're looking forward to trying. Have a great day, and make sure you hit like and subscribe. Bye!